Hello, everybody. This is Nick Totaro, Professor of Information Technologies and Computer Science, Lakeland Community College. Let's talk about honeypots. Now, in the cybersecurity, security, networking security world, we have a concept called honeypots. And you have to use your imagination a little bit. And where that name comes from, if you remember the old Disney version of Winnie the Pooh, where he gets stuck in the rabbit hole and he's eating the honey and he gets so stuck that he can't be pulled out. So the name comes from somebody attempting to do something and getting stuck doing it. But there's also other things that are associated with honeypots. Fundamentally, a honeypot is a special device on a network in which you want attackers to go after. Now, when I mean want your attackers to go over, I don't mean you're broadcasting to the world, hey, check this out, please attack this machine. But it's diversion. If somebody is scanning your network or attempting to figure things out on your network, if you can divert them to some place else, if you can divert them to a device, a honeypot, that's intention is to divert them from live activity. Let me go up to my screen and let's map some things out, and then I'm going to do some quick demonstrations using a honeypot. All right, so here's this little map, and what we have here is we have the public network over here, the internet. We have our DMZ over here, and then we have our private network over here. And you'll notice that I did set up 3 honeypot icons in each situation. Let me break down the one that most of the time you'll often see, and that's the one right here in the DMZ. In other videos, we talked about the DMZ, and that's basically an area on a network that is between the public network and your private network. That is the area that you'll often see your public web server, your mail server, and things like that. Now, on the private side, you have all your private or confidential machines. And then over here on the public side, it's the Wild West. It's the entire internet. But many times you see the honeypot in the DMZ because you know that we have to let communication occur between this firewall, between the public network and the DMZ. So bad actors, attackers, will go looking for these DMZs. They will go looking for these firewalls, and then if they obviously can get through the firewall, maybe by doing a web server, by trying to hit the email server, they begin to look for things in the DMZ. And if you entice them enough with a honeypot over here, maybe it looks like another web server. Maybe it looks like a SSH server or something like that. You want the attackers to drift over here to the honeypot. Now, that is usually the norm, that we want the attackers, the bad actors, to basically go to the honeypot and leave the live machines alone. But there is another thing that honeypots do. Many times we use honeypots to collect data, to see what the attackers are doing. And you see this a lot, especially in the cybersecurity world, where they'll throw honeypots out into the wild. That's over here into the public. And they want to see if people are enticed, if the bad actors of the world are enticed to probe that honeypot. And then maybe we can learn what they're doing so we can improve cybersecurity. So, you might see the maybe a script kiddie or something, trying to guess passwords, but a state-sponsored cyber attack, they're hitting a honeypot with probably some high-end intelligence gathering mechanisms. Now, that might be extremely brief, but you can see the value there, that when it's over here on the public side, a lot of times it is meant to gather data. Over here in the DMZ, you're trying to do 2 things. One, you're trying to prevent people from getting to live machines or machines that have value, and you're collecting data. But you often see honeypots out here in the wild, or you don't. Again, we don't want the attackers to know that they're honeypots, but they will be out there in the wild seeing what the attackers do. Now, the attackers don't want to go after honeypots because it's a waste of their time. I've read articles where a poorly designed honeypot was used as a launch to a more serious attack, or I've heard that whoever set up the honeypot used live passwords. The honeypot is designed to be compromised. You know, it's meant. We don't want it to be compromised, but that's its purpose. So you don't ever want to put live data or sensitive data on a honeypot machine. They're isolated devices. And finally, you might be looking over here at this private network and you say, why would you have a honeypot on a private network? Exact same thing. A lot of internal breaches are done on the private network. You would be surprised the number of people that surf their private network, not given permission, to see if they can discover information. So yeah, they will often set up honeypots on the internal network to see who's doing what. Now that's an easy enough capture. Again, it's more of making sure that our employees are behaving themselves. They may be high-end hackers themselves, that they just happen to be employed. So maybe we can gather information, but we're really seeing if people are just misbehaving, if they're going into areas that they're not supposed to go into. So recap on the diagram. The honeypot in the DMZ, you're trying to divert the attention of the bad actors. You don't want them over here on the web server. You don't want them over here on the email server. You don't want them hitting this firewall over here. You want them concentrating their effort on a machine that is fundamentally meaningless, and you would still be gathering information. A honeypot in the wild, or a honeypot on the public side, again, we don't want to tell the bad actors it's a honeypot, but you want the bad actors to hit it to see what new things they are doing. So it's more of a data collection there. And then a honeypot over here in your private network is we're trying to make sure that our employees are not going places or attempting to do things or using the network for things they're not meant to do. So let's take a look at my machine, and let's look at an open source honeypot called Teapot. It's interesting. I will be really honest with you on that. The one that I am running, because I don't have it in the wild, I have it on my test network. The data is extremely boring because I had to kind of force attacks. But let's take a look at it. Okay, so I'm up here on my Kali Linux machine. I'm really not going to be using the Kali Linux as a penetration testing tool. What I'm going to be doing is looking at the honeypot, looking at the data that was accumulated by the honeypot running on my network. So as I mentioned before, I'm using a well-known, well-established open source honeypot called Teapot. It's pretty robust. In a second, I will show you that I basically left everything open. But this is what we would, I hate to use the word typically see, but this is on my particular network. Some of the attacks that have occurred on my particular network. Let me move there it goes. You can see I did some denial of service attacks. That's what this packet broke it right here. I was doing some denial of service attacks. I was doing some three-way handshaking, probing ports. Again, we want the bad actors. We don't want them on live machines. We want them going after these if they choose fit. Somewhere in here, oh yeah, I tried to connect in through a VNC, and I kept on making typos. So here is the tip. I don't want to say typical traffic, but this is the type of report that you would often see. Now, in a real honeypot situation where they're gathering large amounts of data, you would probably see something like this, right? This is just an image I took off the internet. Yeah. This particular honeypot, the teapot, will do mapping, and it will tell you where those attacks are coming from. And be really honest with you, it's very scary. If you go up to the internet, go to YouTube, some people demonstrate Teapot on in the live internet, and literally within an hour of having things set up, the bots and the zombies and all that other stuff start clobbering these devices. They're gathering, the people who roll out these honeypots are often gathering information to see what the current attackers are doing. And what's scary is it is often coming from state-sponsored attacks. You will see attacks coming from, and I'm not trying to be disparaging here, you will see attacks coming from North Korea. You will see attacks coming from Russia. I don't have a honeypot on the live internet. It's just not something I do. I don't have the resources to do that. But this is what you would typically see. And you would get these maps and you would say, okay, where these attacks are coming from, what the attacks are doing, IP address, and then gathering that information, you can shut down those ports on your live machine. So there's a lot of potential information that you could acquire from this. So that's what you would really see. Sadly, on my poor network, I just didn't generate enough attacks here. Let me show you what the honeypot server looks like. So hold on one second. Sorry for the splices there. It's just, my machine is horribly, so you don't need to be watching me for 2 minutes logging into device. But this is the little honeypot that I'm running, and you can see it's just sitting there watching. Just kind of FYI, this is a bare bones Ubuntu server, right? It is a minimal installation to it. If I was to really deploy this, the password that I would actually use on this machine would not be the password for my account or a real account. I wouldn't even use a real account. I would use dummy accounts. I would use very, very sophisticated passwords. This server would not be connected to any other servers. There would be no connection. There would be no database connections or anything like that, because this server may get compromised. And if it does, you don't want to lose live data. I know it sounds like I'm being a little facetious here, and I'm not. You don't want to put live data. You don't want to put the honeypot software on a legitimate server. Why would you put it onto your web server? Again, common sense here, but I'm just kind of pointing this out. All this server does, while I'm running it, it sits there and it just logs the activity. And you'll see it's just resetting and logging and resetting. So when the attacker, myself, starts hitting the server, it's recording all that. So this is what a honeypot may look like. Let me restate this. It is a bare bones machine. I mean, it is running nothing on it. When I did the installation, this is common practice, and they will tell you as you're installing it, you want a bare bones machine. Obviously, you want all the security, right? You don't want it to be a completely dummy machine, but you want all the security and stuff like that, but you don't want to put any live data in there. You want it robust, too. You want it so it would be an effort. It would be a chore to crack into it, right? And you want it to be tempting. But again, this is the data I have here. That's the data we're hunting. Now, let me show you what the attacker or a bad actor would see on this machine. All right, let's take a look at what the attacker would see with a simple probe onto this honeypot. For those who may not be familiar with the tool I'm going to be using, we use it quite extensively in the ethical hacking course, but it is called Nmap. It's probably the Swiss Army knife of networking tools. It allows us to probe and search and do things on ports. So let's go to Godzilla and let's open up a command prompt. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And the command I'm going to use is it's called Nmap. It's a very interesting tool. We use it quite extensively. And I happen to know the address of the honeypot. So I just kind of want to show you what, again, an attacker would see on this honeypot. Give it a second. Okay, so it came back. And let me shrink it up a little bit. And I'm going to say right off the bat, we have to suspend disbelief here. we would never see a honeypot with this many open ports and many services. Uh, I decided when I turned this honeypot on to turn everything, all the data collection, all the honeypot, all the ports, etc. And what we're trying to do with the honeypot is, again, we want to deflect the attacker away from a live machine. So having this many ports open, a pen tester, a hacker, a bad actor would immediately become suspicious. Why are all these ports open? What are you trying to? And actually, some of them, for example, Telnet. We haven't used Telnet in years. It sends things through clear text. So I teach inside the ethical hacking course that you see port 23 Telnet open or available, it's probably an older machine, right? So there are way too many things here open. So what we would do is we would only set up certain ports to be open. For example, if we wanted them to treat it as a web server, we would just open up port 80 and 443. Port 80 is for HTTP, port 443 is for HTTPS. So we say we want this to look like a web server. Now, or maybe we want it to look like a DNS server or whatever, but we would not open up all these ports. We want to be selective. So let's wrap some things up here. All right. A honeypot is designed for a couple things. One, it is designed to take the bad actors away from things. Let them try to attack a machine versus attacking a live machine. If a honeypot is out on in the wild, in the public, there's a good chance that people are trying to gather information about the attacker, especially if it's a nation state or organized crime. What are they doing? What are the newer techniques? If the honeypot is within the DMZ, we're usually trying to say, when people come to the DMZ, go over here. Let the bad actors try to go over here versus attacking live machines. And if it's the honeypot is in a private network, we're making sure that our users aren't fooling around or doing things that they're not supposed to. They're not being too inquisitive about why are they looking at these particular machines. So a couple things. When we set up those honeypots, we want to make sure they're robust, that all the security patches in there. We want to make sure that it is hardened. We do not want to put any live data, and we don't want that honeypot pointing to other machines with live data. Even something as simple as the username and password on that honeypot. You don't want it to be a real user. You don't want it to be a real or a recycled password. You want to make it as complicated as possible because there's a good chance they're going to breach that system. Now, with that in mind, there are a couple schools of thoughts about the overall concept of honeypots. Some people do believe they're a waste of time. You're just or you're intentionally bringing people into your DMZ or into your network. You're enticing them. And I understand that. But you need to understand the bad actors in the world, they don't need enticements. If you were to look at some of the demonstrations of different honeypots, if you go up to YouTube, people throw them out and literally within minutes, they're just being attacked. So yeah, I understand some people say they're a waste of time. They almost entice people to do damage. I kind of fall into the category of it's a tool in the toolbox. Why not employ it? For a couple reasons. If I can divert the bad actors from doing things on my live machine, wonderful. And if I can gather information of what the attackers are doing, is there something new or are they looking for certain things? Then that's all to my benefit. So it's a tool in our toolbox. We use it. I encourage it. Again, it really depends on different policies and procedures and things like that. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's go learn something.